Is the G7 as powerful as they claim? What if we told you that BRICS had already surpassed the G7 and the West is too terrified to recognize it? BRICS has surpassed the G7 in global importance without your knowledge because the media failed to highlight the fact. People are unaware that the BRICS nations control roughly half of the world's population and 41% of global oil production. So, why are we still claiming the G7 is the world's leader, while BRICS dominates in every critical area? Let us find out. When contemplating economic power, GDP is typically the first thing that comes to mind. However, not all GDP metrics are equivalent. GDP measured by purchasing power parity is the most important factor in this discussion. PPP is a measure that accounts for price discrepancies across countries. It provides a clearer picture of what people may buy with their wages and the true economic value generated within countries. And this is the bombshell. The BRICS countries now account for 32% of world GDP, or PPP, with the G7 trailing at 29%. This is more than simply a symbolic milestone. It marks the beginning of an economic reality. To understand how BRICS managed to outperform the G7, we must examine the specific dynamics underlying this transition. Countries like China, India, have been expanding at dizzying speed over the last few decades. China's strategic concentration on infrastructure development, manufacturing, and export-driven growth has helped it construct an economic empire. South African trade has made significant contributions to the BRICS. Meanwhile, India has emerged as a global leader in technology and services, thanks to its large and young workforce that drives businesses ranging from information technology to pharmaceuticals. So, what distinguishes BRICS is its potential to create actual, concrete riches. Unlike the G7, which relies heavily on financial speculation and services, the BRICS economies are based on production, whether it's manufacturing in China, energy in Russia, or agricultural in Brazil. This type of economic output has a far-reaching long-term influence, creating value that exists not only on paper but also in reality. Although the G7 continues to dominate nominal GDP, this does not reflect the full story. The purchasing power of the BRICS nations demonstrates their ability to sustain economic expansion without relying on the crutches that have long supported the Western world. But let us not ignore the significance of their most recent growth. With the addition of the UAE, Egypt, Ethiopia, and Iran, BRICS has grown even stronger. These countries contribute resources, trading channels, and strategic influence, strengthening BRICS supremacy. The G7's grip on the global economy is slipping, and the BRICS are more than ready to take the lead. From an economic sovereignty standpoint, the shift in GDP PPP reflects a broader rejection of Western control. The BRICS countries are no longer willing to play by the rules of a system created by and for the West. Instead, they are expanding their economic networks by using the G7's power and forming new relationships with one another. This is economic freedom on a scale unprecedented since the end of colonialism. With BRICS leading in GDP, the next question is how their population size gives them an even greater advantage on a global scale. Here's a reminder to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more videos on global geopolitics, the economy, and the changing landscape. Let us proceed now. Numbers don't deceive, and with the recent rise of BRICS, this group now accounts for 45% of the world population, or nearly half of humanity. That is an astounding statistic that cannot be ignored. Population size is important in the global economy for one simple reason. It translates to economic potential. The more individuals you have, the larger your workforce and customer base. It's that simple. Consider China and India, for instance. They collectively account for more than 1/3 of the world's population. These two countries alone are driving global demand in ways that the G7 countries cannot match. Their middle classes are fast growing, resulting in a consumer base that exceeds anything in the West. These customers not only buy items made in their nations, but they also contribute to an increase in import demand, which enhances trade partnerships throughout the global South. Furthermore, BRICS' big and youthful populations provide an advantage in terms of creativity and output. While the G7 countries struggle with aging populations and shrinking workforces, the BRICS are benefiting from a demographic dividend. Young, dynamic workforces in nations such as India, Brazil, and South Africa are better able to adapt to technology advances, innovate, and drive future growth. The G7, with its aging population, is struggling to maintain comparable levels of production and innovation. But it's more than simply economics. With a growing proportion of the global population comes increased political power. The BRICS countries are increasingly exploiting their population advantage to advocate for increased representation in international institutions such as the United Nations and the International Monetary Fund. They want a voice that matches their economic and demographic weight. And as the G7 countries' economies and populations dwindle, their potential to dictate global policy will surely wane. With such a large population advantage, BRICS is exercising its muscles in another critical area: oil output. How did the BRICS take the lead in world oil production? Energy is the lifeblood of the global economy, and the BRICS have taken the lead in oil production. With the UAE entering the group, BRICS now controls 41% of global oil production, or over half of the world's supply. This is more than just an economic advantage. It is a geopolitical game-changer. For decades, the G7, particularly the United States, leveraged its control of global energy markets to wield political and economic power around the world. Control over oil meant control over everything, including commercial routes and diplomatic connections. However, with BRICS controlling the vast bulk of the world's oil, the balance of power has shifted. Russia, one of the world's largest oil producers, is critical to the BRICS' energy dominance. Despite Western sanctions, Russia continues to pump oil, and it is finding ready clients among the BRICS countries and their allies. China and India, BRICS' two major energy customers, have been eager to sign long-term oil agreements with Russia and other BRICS members. These alliances are undercutting the West's efforts to isolate Russia and establishing a new energy order that bypasses the G7. Furthermore, BRICS is carefully aligning itself with other big energy players, such as Saudi Arabia. While Saudi Arabia is not currently a member of BRICS, it is evident that the monarchy wishes to strengthen its ties with the bloc. The energy markets are being reshaped as the UAE joins BRICS and Saudi Arabia invests billions in partnerships with BRICS members. The petrodollar, once the backbone of global energy markets, is being challenged as more countries seek to trade oil in currencies other than the US dollar. The shift in oil production power directly challenges the West's hegemony. For years, the G7 utilized its power over energy markets to influence world politics in its favor. However, BRICS, with control over a large portion of the world's oil, is now in a position to dictate the terms. This isn't just about economics. It's about who gets to make the decisions on the global stage. With BRICS controlling the energy markets, the next question is how they are driving global economic growth and what this means for the future. According to the IMF, BRICS now generates 44% of global economic development, while the G7 contributes only 20%. That is a stunning discrepancy, and it is only widening. This is not a coincidence. It is the outcome of purposeful long-term planning by the BRICS nations who are committed to real, sustainable growth. The G7, on the other hand, is plagued by political deadlock, deteriorating infrastructure, and growing debt. Their economies have advanced to the point where development is slow and difficult to attain. In comparison, the BRICS nations are still in the process of developing. They're making significant investments in infrastructure, technology, and education, all of which drive long-term economic growth. China's Belt and Road Initiative is a prime illustration of how BRICS is thinking ahead, constructing trade networks and infrastructure that will benefit not only BRICS states, but also the countries with which they collaborate. In contrast, the G7 economies are battling to retain their momentum. The United States, for example, is experiencing tremendous political conflict and economic inequality, which are limiting its growth potential. Europe, too, is dealing with aging populations and economic stagnation. BRICS, on the other hand, is young, active, and expanding rapidly. So, are BRICS the next world leaders? BRICS is more than just an economic group. It is a movement, a shift toward a multipolar world in which power is distributed among countries that represent the vast majority of the world's population, rather than concentrated in the hands of a few Western nations. This is the future of global leadership, and BRICS is leading the way. So now that the BRICS have exceeded the G7, what function does the G7 still play? Can the G7 reclaim its dominance, or will BRICS lead the next century? Please let us know in the comments section. Are you ready to live in a world where the BRICS set the terms of trade, growth, and resources? Would you like to see more videos like this one? If so, please subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We've decided to bring you videos on topics that no one talks about: global politics, economics, and expanding power. Thank you for viewing, and until the next video, stay tuned.